AI at work. It's evident that AI is going to transform the way we work. But what are the pioneering use cases? Now today I'm going to take you on a tour here at UiPath Forward 6 in Las Vegas, where we will discuss the most remarkable use cases that are there right now in the market of how AI is revolutionizing our work routines. Now shared by experts who have hands-on experience in the field. We will delve deep and we will provide you with comprehensive insights on how you can achieve success with AI in the workplace. We will explore use cases across various types of sectors, including services industry, but also banking, retail, and many more industries. Now we delve into specific use cases as well, specific areas where AI is reshaping our work, such as document processing, help desk support, executing self-service actions for clients, test automation, communication mining, process mining, and much more. Now, if you stay until the end, we have an amazing surprise that anyone who's aspiring to excel in AI will adore. Now, this gift will equip you with the knowledge of the latest technologies and bring your career to the next level. So, stay tuned and stay till the end. Now, let's go to the first booth where we will dive into the banking sector. Come here with me. Hi Brandon, how are you?
Great, how are you doing?
We're going to talk about banking today.
Yes.
You're an expert in banking.
That's right.
Brandon Nott, you're from Amelia. Mm-hmm. And Amelia has some great use cases with AI at work in banking.
That's right.
Let's dive first into the first use case, and that's IT support. I've heard some great type of use case, but maybe you can explain from an end user perspective, how do they traditionally use IT support?
Yeah.
And then we dive deeper with how AI can help.
Great question. So when we think about our users, we can break them up into different personas or use cases. So IT support is a great one. It's a horizontal use case. It's applicable across a number of different industries. But in banking, it's particularly useful just because of how tech heavy systems are. You have legacy systems, you have newer systems, you have cloud as banks are shifting to the cloud. And so the IT support can actually get pretty complex. And having Amelia as an IT support desk agent be able to interact with people any time of day, in any scenario, in order to help them do something as simple as resetting a password, or something that could be quite complex, like my computer's running slow, how might I resolve this? Amelia can work with the bank's systems in order to help expedite any issue that employees are having.
But how does it go? So normally in the bank employee says, I need to reset my password. Yeah. What's happening inside the bank?
Great. So if you need to reset your password, probably you don't have access to your computer. So then what, right?
Correct.
Well, I can, in a reactive way, meaning I've just realized that my password is not working, I can call and talk to Amelia over the phone with voice. I could text. It doesn't matter. Amelia can handle different channels, different modalities of communication, and then identify me, authenticate me, make sure I am who I say I am, and then go and unlock my password.
But I first want to understand how it's going today.
That's right. So today, in a similar way, you're going to be calling somebody. You're going to be sending an email, IT desk from your home email, maybe, because you don't have access to your work email, presumably. And somebody's going to pick that up and work that ticket, right? So you're looking for 24/7 support if you're after hours or on the weekend, and somebody's then going to have to go through those same steps, use the same systems in order to unlock that password for you.
So IT support at the bank is a huge team, needs to be there 24/7 because they're all around the world.
That's right.
Now go to the next step indeed, how can AI help?
Great. So I mentioned earlier, and I used the word reactive, right?
Yeah.
I just realized that I don't have access to email. Better than that would be proactive, in which AI looks and sees that there's a password that's been locked out, and can send me a message on my text, on my phone, and say, this is your employer, I see that you've been locked out of your password, do you want me to go ahead and reset that for you? We actually do that within Amelia.
Okay.
We use our own products in this way. And so this kind of proactive outreach and understanding what's happening in systems and understanding how to be helpful before it's a problem that needs to be escalated is a great way to overlay AI on top of some of these common scenarios that everybody needs.
That's a great case, really like it. And now if we look to the implementation, because it looks very simple, but if we go, let's say, behind the scenes, what's happening, so what step needs to be taken to make this working from an implementation perspective?
Right, great question. So we can split out the implementation into a couple parts. Amelia has a brain, believe it or not, and Amelia's brain is
like a little bit like a brain.
That's right. It's kind of like our brains. There's different subsystems, about 24, that respond based on the type of communication that I'm having. So Amelia needs to know that this is something that can be resolved. So Amelia needs to know that there's a password reset concept. Now, because we've been doing this for a long time, we have a password reset module, and would you believe there's like 15 different ways to reset a password. So we've written that language, that logic in, so that a customer can take the benefit of an existing scenario and not have to go through those same steps. So it's the intent model. It's the fact that password is a thing, reset is a thing, and guess what? That's not the only way how people talk about it. You know, it could be my computer is locked. There are variations on that Amelia can actually take those variations and map it, find the intent that's in the programming, and then once it's identified that, confirm that, go through a process, and if we were to look at what's happening behind this conversation, you would see steps and different paths that our conversation could take. And once that endpoint is identified, Amelia will then reach out via an API or a UiPath integration and perform the action that resolves that intent.
But I can imagine there's a lot of applications, as you mentioned already in banking, but there's security issues. So you need to be 100% sure that nobody can access and say, create a login for me, create a username, password. So how do you do this? What kind of steps are behind the scenes?
Yeah, great question. So in this case, and we're not talking generative right now, we're talking classic conversational AI.
Correct.
The paths are very scripted. They are approved, they are reviewed by a compliance team, by a security team, whatever those processes are. And Amelia cannot go and do something outside of the permissions of what has been provided. So as a help desk requester, I can't ask Amelia to create a new account for me. I can't ask Amelia to do these things that are beyond my permission level or beyond the programming. So what you end up with is a very clean, very repeatable, very auditable process for helping customers and employees out with the needs that they're trying to fulfill.
Yeah, now if you look from the bank perspective again, on one end your employees, as you said, you can be proactive.
That's right.
So instead of being annoyed, I can't log in. Start waiting for an answer, help desk maybe, they have a queue, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour waiting time, issues. Some people are maybe $20 an hour, but some are $200 or even more an hour.
That's right.
It can solve and save a lot of money.
Yes.
Do you have some idea about the use case, how much money you can save for a specific bank? Did you make some calculations?
Well, look, we do, and what's interesting is there are some use cases like the password reset that seemingly have a relatively small return on that. You know, this is something that happens regularly, but it's measurable, and you can look at it. It's more of a necessity than it is proof of value over there. Where the value starts getting in is where you automate things that have a much higher leverage for the organization. So think about validating trades in a scenario where you could use conversational intelligence to actually go in and ensure if I'm going to sell stock or I want to sell shares or something like that, that my intent is captured, but all of the type of trading, the metadata around that trade can be handled through automation.
I like to understand that case more in depth. So if we look from an end user perspective, I'm a client and I have my stock portfolio, I want to do a trade.
That's right.
Normally I probably dial my desk, say, can you do a transaction for me? Or I do it online and I do a transaction. So how does this, can you describe how it's regularly working. This is what I know
Yeah.
from my perspective, but
Yep.
maybe you can explain from the bank perspective what kind of cases do you have and how do they traditionally handle
Right.
these type of cases?
Right. So traditionally, just like you said, you're going to call somebody, you're going to go onto the website, you're going to check some boxes, and I don't know about you, I have caught myself almost making mistakes while doing a trade on the website, even though I feel very comfortable doing this. You know, maybe I selected the wrong.
It can cost you
tranche.
money,
It
which
can,
is
and
not nice.
Yeah, typically you don't get to call the bank and say, "Oops, I made a mistake. Could you please reverse that transaction?"
yeah.
Right? This is a big, highly regulated scenario. When you have Amelia, think about it as like having a coach, like having somebody that can walk you through the process in an expedited or a very complex way to make sure that the right things get done. So if I ask Amelia, you're looking at a conversation right here, it happens to be for transferring money, but let's say that conversation was, I want to sell 1,000 shares of a given stock. That's an easy intent to map. Amelia knows what I'm trying to do. And Amelia, via the programming, also understands every step that needs to happen. In addition, needs to understand possible configurations. So example, I want to sell 1,000 shares, market value right now.
Yeah.
That's an easy trade to make, right? But as soon as I start saying things like, I want to sell 1,000 shares, I want this to be good for 1 week, I have a limit price. Now all of a sudden,
complex.
you start having different, and Amelia will respond by asking me more questions, right? And that first question might be, do you want to sell right now at market? Or do you want to look at other options? Oh, other options. And Amelia can then guide me through this process rather than relying on my quick clicking to get through it, for example.
And then again, this looks quite simple, but if you look behind the scenes, what kind of automation steps do you take?
Yep.
Can you explain in more detail?
Absolutely. So when you program Amelia, again, Amelia has this brain with all these different subsystems. Some of that capability just works out of the box. Like there's a sentiment subsystem. So if we're having a conversation and I say, this is taking too long, the sentiment engine may very well kick in and escalate the conversation outside of the programming, for example. So that's out of the box.
Okay.
There's part that we have to write. We have to write what those instructions are in that conversational flow. And when we get to the end of one of those trees that we talked about, either the quick sell or the complex sell or some combination, at the very end is an activity that connects to that banking system.
Right.
And that activity acts via an API usually, again, a UiPath robot if there's no interface or it's a mainframe. Amelia can then make the request. That action happens within that banking infrastructure. It's been validated, there's logs, there's traceability, we see exactly what happened prior to this transaction. And then once that executes, confirmation is received, and Amelia can report back to me, I've recorded this transaction, it's either complete and sold, or you've got 7 days for this to complete, and then I'll let you know, perhaps, if your trade actually gets resolved at that limit price.
And this is quite sensitive, so governance needs to be there.
That's
but
right.
also, if something goes wrong,
That's right.
who's to blame?
That's right. Now, this is no different than any other automation system.
Right.
Right. There is, the blame. It's such an important question.
Right.
Who's running the program? Who did the testing? Who validated it? What are the processes to validate things? The good news is, banks have become, via regulation and mistakes over time, just very good at having compliance departments, very good at having sign-offs for QA. So what we've seen from our banking is actually a real appreciation for this, because unlike maybe a call center agent, probably you're recording logs, but you'd have to go through and read that conversation completely. Amelia's conversations are all scripted. They're all written in advance. So as a compliance department, you quite like having the benefit of a completely managed conversation that has very discrete and success or fail outcomes.
And if you look from the client perspective, from the bank perspective, is this specifically improving the customer experience?
Yeah.
Or where is the benefit in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the reality is the benefit is all over the place.
Okay.
This is a multifaceted benefit. So on one hand, it was funny, for Mimi, I was giving a talk the other day, and somebody had raised their hand and said, well, I won't do drive-throughs anymore that where I don't talk to a human. That's absolutely fair. And I said, but I'm curious for the room, how many people have had a great experience talking with a virtual assistant with immediate success and not having to wait on hold or be called back 30 minutes later? Half the room raised their hand. So the benefit is, one, my time as a user of this. I get access to the systems I need when I need it in a way that somebody has thoughtfully considered what the outcome should look like. Two, when I have a better brand experience, that's an MPS potential. That's a CSAT potential. So I am preferring to work with these companies that have the technology that I need in order to protect my time and my value. So, and the bank, of course, is seeing ROI on the outcomes. So you get this multifaceted benefit from the customer to the company to the brand when you use these tools.
And I have one more use
Expert
case.
School is now closed. Join us back here at 7:30 for the automation celebration.
And I have one more use case which I want to discuss with you, which you hear all the time, is documentation.
Yeah.
So documentation is used everywhere, in every department, in every process.
Right.
Can you describe how banks are using documentation and what kind of challenges they're facing if they do it the traditional way?
Yes, and this brings us into generative AI and all of the excitement that's happening around that, and for very good reason. Because when we look at our documentation, our search algorithms have gotten really good, right? I mean, we've been doing search now as an industry for quite a while. But I'm still having to go in and find a list of documents or a list of different things and then synthesize this myself. Generative gives us the chance to take that same documentation and summarize it for me. Give me the bit of information that's actually very helpful, and then trace it back to the source documents where that came from. So when we think about banks, when we think about how much regulatory information is internal to banks, account information, standard operating procedures, again, banks have gotten really good at being prescriptive about their processes. That's all documented. So as we feed that into a generative model, Amelia can become the spokesperson for that documentation. And you can ask Amelia, what are the rules of making this trade, or what are the implications in this country of doing this based on legislation that exists. And Amelia can assemble that answer from that documentation, provide it to the user, and then this takes us back to our security element, even then cite the material, cite the source documents where that came from, so that as a user, I have my summarized answer, and I also have the exact places where this is referenced.
And if I look to, let's say, documentation, kind of challenges you can have, and especially with, for example, accounting, data and description, the large language models can't make a mistake, because if it makes a mistake and it gives incorrect answers, it can have huge consequences. Especially if you go into trade and give trade advice and like that. So how do you prevent, where it's probably a multi-step type of process, that it doesn't make any mistake?
It's a great question. So this is where the use case is really important. I talked about Amelia's 24 subsystems, right? That documentation example that we just talked about is just one of those subsystems. I probably don't want that to fire if someone has identified that they want to make a trade. I want them to use my coded, prescriptive, only one way to get through this process. I wanted to use that part of Amelia's brain. So based on the use cases, you can say what is possible to be leveraged. In some cases, you may want multiple possibilities, and that's how you manage your risk. And so you don't use generative AI across the board. You use it when the risk profile is correct. And by the way, you probably have grounded the model or fine-tuned the model to be even more effective and direct in answering that question. But as soon as that risk passes a certain level, you have the benefit of actually coded conversational flows that are repeatable and will not hallucinate.
And if you look, let's say, to the general audience, everybody thinks about Bart or ChatGPT as storing and sharing your data with these language models, which is definitely not allowed within banking systems.
Right.
So how does it work? So how does this language model only work for specific content,
Yeah.
and specifically for this bank that
Great
the data
question.
doesn't go out or outside of the bank?
Yeah. So the exciting thing right now is that there's diversity in large language models, not just from the which foundation model you're using,
Yeah.
but also how you're using the prompts and the documentation that you're going back. So for instance, we know a lot of banks that have private tenants that they leverage that are just part of their own infrastructure. We have banks that are using open source models, self-hosted.
Correct.
We have banks using our open source models that we host. So the risk profile, the documentation that's being stored there, the costs associated with that, all of this goes into the use case. And we're fortunate enough in such a short amount of time to have so many options. So Amelia is a purveyor of these models and these capabilities, and based on the use case and the risk profile, you choose the right utilization of large language models to give you the protection that you're looking for.
So if we look from the perspective either from the bank or from the end
Yeah.
user, what is this about? Is this about improving customer experience? Is this cost saving? Is this creating new services by a bank?
Short answer is all of the above. And the benefit that we have here is for a low risk use case, like summarize my website for customers. That's already public data.
Yeah.
That there's very low risk in that being shared with the foundation model or used in your journey. You'll still think about it. For something that's very sensitive, an internal policy, proprietary trading processes, things like that, you're going to want to make sure that you take that risk profile into consideration, because it's going to generate more value, because I have higher expectations about who it's going to enable and what they're going to be able to do. So we're all doing this together. Our customers, partners, Amelia, we're finding the right formulas for each of these use cases to manage that risk, deliver that value, and do it in a timely manner.
I love this banking case, and I think this is just 3 examples, but I think we can continue for a couple of hours with all these nice examples. But I'll probably come back for all these other examples.
Excellent.
Thanks a lot. I'm continuing my tour here at UiPath Forward 6. And thanks again, great insights, and my audience will love this.
Thank you so much. Really great having you.
Thanks. Bye. Hi Daniel.
Hi there.
How are you?
Very good.
Great to see you over here. We discussed already before, you have some great cases from communication mining and test automation. You're Daniel Young, you're working at FWF, you are a consulting firm and you're a consulting director. You work with great clients, and I really would like to deep dive today. And initially, let's start with test automation. Maybe you can explain how test automation typically works in an organization before you start the automation.
Sure. So obviously many companies have to test all the applications they have, their internal, their websites, their internal systems. And it's becoming especially important now. Everything's moved to the cloud. All the different SaaS platforms get updated, but you still have to make sure they work for your data. So we're helping a lot of companies where they are testing, they're setting up the tests, rather than doing them manually, they use the UiPath Test Suite to set up automations to do automated testing. Can be done script by script, but also they do it integrated into their DevOps. So they have continuous integration, continuous delivery.
Can you explain a little bit more about this automation? So what kind of steps are you taking? How are you improving it?
Sure. So we typically, the way we work is we work, and the best way to use it is you work with the development teams, whether they're looking after the website or the CRM system or the line of business system, what they're trying to achieve, what is the success for the new features they're adding, and then we help write test scripts, or that we help them develop their own test scripts with UiPath that are then run against every time they release a new feature and a bug. To solve a bug.
And you still need to define the process and the steps that the script has to run, or you don't have to do that anymore?
You define the test cases,
yeah.
You pull all the test cases, there are acceptance criteria,
yeah.
You add a new user on a website, this is the acceptance criteria, this is what success looks like, and then you make a script to match that acceptance criteria.
So if let's say I did tests as well, but then we use, for example, Selenium. So how does it work now if you use UiPath? So what kind of steps do you take, and how is it then different?
So the difference is that you can record with a click of a button, you can record the steps and you can run through, so you can get the development team themselves to record the script, and then that can be used in different environments away from the development team through the life cycle. So the difference from Selenium is it can work across not just web applications, but desktop, and we're using it at, like with the Swiss group, we're using it across Internet of Things, mobile apps, websites, SaaS platforms, SAP, and enabling them to do end-to-end testing across the entire sort of estate.
And if interfaces changes, what happens?
So if interface, then the test case fails, and it comes back, the package is not deployed, and then the notification comes and you have to essentially adjust the script or re-record it.
Okay. And can you explain at clients where you worked at, what kind of benefits do you generate? Is it cost savings? Is it faster? Less errors?
So, I mean, the major benefit that we're seeing with most clients now is the ability for them to deliver more changes to the business more quickly. So if they can test something and be confident that it works, then let's say HR department wants to make a new benefit scheme for the employees, rather than spending 3 months to get it live in Workday, they can essentially have it and roll it out next week.
Okay.
And that enables the business to move more quickly with confidence that everything's tested and that they're not going to sort of share salaries of the employees.
So key part is time to market, that's
exactly.
the key part of the case. Then the other one, which I think is quite interesting, which is communication mining. I think it needs an explanation what it really is, how companies do it traditionally. Let's dive into that part. So maybe you can explain what communication mining is, because I don't think everybody knows.
So at the very simplest, communication mining is processing communication, so generally emails, but can be texts or other messages, and using those, whether it's external, so customers contacting you, rather than having people processing the emails, you're using the communication mining suite to train it up so that it can read the emails, extract the details from the emails that are relevant. It can assign, it can say this is a support email, this is a complaint, this is a sales piece, and then if necessary, then you can update your back-end systems, or you can make a reply.
Because currently many companies have this single inbox. Is this particularly for single inbox companies, or for ticketing systems?
It can be across. So sometimes it's single inbox, sometimes it's teams. We're doing some with big tax and audit firms where they have 200 different mailboxes. And the customers are there, the auditors are there, and queries are coming in, and rather than having someone waiting and having to respond within a few hours, they're able to respond instantly. And beyond that, the real advantage that we're now seeing, we're able now to make it multilingual.
Okay.
So you can set it up in English, or whichever language you want, and then sort of 200 languages, whatever somebody emails gets translated to English, communication mining does its magic, and then it gets converted back into the original language. So what that means is you can converse with customers or employees without having to have all the languages in a team there, and you can do that 24/7.
Yeah, I like these two cases. On one hand you said you can have 200 mail inboxes. How does it work in that case? Because all these different, whether it's sales, HR, marketing, everybody gets data in his inbox. What is happening then? If the mail comes in, what steps are taken?
So first step is it comes in, it's looking for the labels to see whether it is, if it can recognize what type of email it is. It assigns it, this is a support email.
Okay.
And then for that type of label, then it's working out what do you want to do with information. Do you want to add it into your Jira as a ticket? Do you want to, and also sentiment analysis. Is this an urgent ticket?
Okay.
Are they angry? And you can define then different rules about how you go about dealing with that, without having to obviously have somebody sit there and make that judgment.
So it's basically analyzing it, labeling it, and then define the actions, and the actions can be all different kinds of scenarios, probably there's hundreds of them. Exactly. And if you compare it then with the single inbox approach, what's different from the multiple inbox approach?
The multiple inbox just means obviously if you have large organizations, different departments have their own inboxes, and the idea here is that you can train it once and you can deploy it across multiple inboxes.
Yeah.
If you've got a single one, then it's just one large model and you're dealing it for the whole company. So there's no real difference, but it's the scale of the impact. Obviously you have multiple inboxes, hundreds of inboxes, you've probably got hundreds of people manning them. So the savings obviously are...
Yeah, you're talking about impact. I like to know the economics, of course.
Sure.
Can you explain what's the impact for a regular organization? Is it time saving?
So one is obviously time to respond. So the benefit of that one is if you can provide quotes more quickly, if you can respond to queries, you obviously in a more structured way, maybe you can be able to increase your customer experience, customer satisfaction, so your CSAT rating. Also from a, if you're doing it on procure to pay side, so vendors, if they're chasing their invoices, they want to know where is my invoice, you can tell them instantly it's coming, it's being paid, so you have happy suppliers, which means they give you better prices. So it really depends on the use case, and we tailor them. The recommendation is to tailor it to make sure that the way you're processing them target that benefit that you're looking for.
And what's the normal cycle time from first idea till implementation, or it really depends on the case?
The simplest ones, 2-3 weeks.
Okay.
Communication mining is, in some degree, simpler.
Yeah.
You just need some examples of the emails, you train them up. Two very complex ones, sort of 12 weeks, 24 weeks, depending on what it is you're trying to achieve. And the idea is you deliver a little bit of value every sprint, or every 2 weeks, so that the stakeholders stay engaged, they get some value, and they come up with their own ideas of new things that they want included. And that's where we see the real magic.
Yeah, it's remarkable that, let's say, companies are not doing this already, most of the companies, because it's such an obvious type of challenge.
Indeed.
It's a great solution. Thanks a lot. I'm going
Pleasure.
to my next booth, and thanks for all the insights.
Thanks for coming over.
Thank you.
Good to meet you.
Thanks. Hi Russell.
Hey Rob,
Good to meet you again.
nice to meet you again.
You had some great cases we were discussing before.
Absolutely.
A case about the law firm. I'm here talking to Russell Alfetje, your technology lead at Cubotica, and we were discussing a very interesting case in a law firm. Maybe you can give a little bit of an explanation about the challenges that law firms have and how this is solved. But let's first start about the challenges that they have and how you're going to solve this.
Absolutely. So the main challenge is these are they have this list of predetermined URLs that they have their attorneys. These are attorneys, right? JD that use these URLs, access this day in day out, and what they need to do is summarize the content based on a particular topic that the scope that they need to abide in this particular use case. So there are thousands of URL and they have to do it each day, right? And they have no time for casework, given that they have to do it by manually and they have to review this, all kinds of stuff. So it's seemingly simple use case of summarizing the content of the website, but you have to dedicate some time to summarize it and read through it by yourself manually.
And can you give some examples of what type of content the lawyer needs to collect every day, needs to go through every day?
Absolutely. So there's particular website per country that they access to for tax updates regarding a particular region or country. And taking it up a notch, they not only they have to summarize it, but they also need to follow certain style guides to create that summary. And there's a particular scope that they need to abide by in order to create that summary, right? So they have to do that for each and every URL or website that they go to, and define what are the tax updates, what is it related about, what does it impact to their cases, and all that stuff.
And how do they do this normally?
Normally they would manually open the browser, go to this website, read through it, understand it in context, right? And being able to summarize in 200 words.
Okay.
And put it in a spreadsheet.
And they do this all manually?
All manually.
And you know the rates of lawyers?
Yeah,
Can be quite from, let's say, $150 to maybe $700,000 or per hour.
Absolutely.
So there's quite some time and quite some money involved in this.
Absolutely.
So if you compare it, let's say, with the current situation, doing it all manually, that's one person, and it needs to be a lawyer, or it can be any assistant?
It's lawyer, JD, judicial doctor.
Okay, and why is this?
Because these are related to certain laws or legal entities within this particular countries, and they have to have that domain knowledge, right? They have to use that in context with the scope that they need to get these tax updates for. So
it's very sensitive of every detail
sensitive,
which
yeah.
they write down, because if they make a mistake, it has implications later on if they come to use it.
Downstream implications. Absolutely.
Now, explain me, how is AI coming into play? What does it do, and how does it basically create a solution for this?
This is the part I love, because in here we use generative AI, or specifically for text, large language models, to automate the solution, right? One of the most common application where you employ generative AI is summarization, which is exactly what they're doing, right? But it's not just calling this generative AI models, it's more providing the context from the website and then feeding into the model and then injecting the scope, injecting the style guides so that you can engineer a prompt properly, and then the model can provide a most reliable output or summary for all of these URLs. So the URL can be ingested from an Excel file, it will be put into a queue, and then an unattended robot would come in and then basically consume each URL, scrape the website, and then you have your summary, and then they can the only thing that they need to do is review it.
But how do you prevent little mistakes? Because little mistake can have big consequences. You don't want to have any hallucination of
Absolutely.
the LLM model.
Yeah.
So how do you prevent this?
That's why there's a human in the loop essence in this LLM framework that Cubotica has published in the UiPath marketplace. This has placeholder for human in the loop, where you can build action center forms that can help them provide feedback on the particular summary for this particular website. And it has links as well to that particular website so that they can cross-check.
And these checks are done by a legal person, by a lawyer, or it can be done by anybody?
This can be done by anybody now, because we are injecting context into the large language model to prevent the hallucination part, right? So not only the content of the URL, but also the style guides, the scope, and everything that needs to be.
It sounds fairly simple.
Fairly simple.
Yeah, if we dive into details, what are the technical steps that have been taken? And if we look to these technical steps, what type of challenges do you have that you have to overcome? Because it's not that simple.
Absolutely. So there are several components for this LLM framework. One is the Studio template. It works like the Robotic Enterprise Framework or RE framework. And the next part is the custom activity, where we build, where you just drag and drop an activity called ingest knowledge source. Just one activity would scrape the website and then put it into the vector store and then get the most relevant input for the summary.
Okay.
And then another activity would feed that source from the vector store, do similarity search, and then be able to feed into a machine learning model so that it will provide the output. So there's several steps. It looks simple, but there are several steps, and it can be deployed in a remote server or in your environment. It is based on Python API backend, so lots of.
And if you have several steps with large language models and with machine learning models, if one step provides incorrect output, it has consequences in all the next steps. So how do you prevent that every step output is perfect, so it can move to the next step, or do you have some quality controls in every step?
So the quality control in the particular step is the proper vector store that you interact with, because vector store converts a sentence, gets its meaning, and then converts into a numerical representation, right? Okay. So that you can do, if you ask something like summarize about tax updates, so that will be converted as well into numeric format so that it can get the most relevant pieces of information from your vector store, and then it can be used to inject context. So it uses, as I said, similarity search. So that's the critical piece, so that you only feed relevant information, not any other information based on your.
Yeah, and one of the applications that you said is summarization, but the other part can be this quality control. So do you use large language models in this quality control as well?
Not as of now, but that can be added as an enhancement. Using large language model to keep the other large language model honest. So that's definitely something that.
And one more thing, you can use large language models for labeling, automatic labeling. Is that applied already?
Yeah, so it's more on the document processing
Okay.
side, the labeling, right? So, but other use cases that we've seen around this area is contracts extraction, contracts like indemnification review. One of the things that we saw as well in this department is they have to read a contract. They have to determine if it's one-sided or two-sided
Correct.
indemnification,
Correct.
and they have to go through a 50-page contract just to do that. But with the large language model, you have just to prompt it with a proper engineered prompt, and then it will say, oh, this is a one-sided indemnification contract, and this is why. So those are other use cases. But essentially,
Yeah, now, let's say the lawyer gets the output. How do they use it right now? So if they get this output, how do they use it? How much time does it take them?
so from, let's say, 8 hours a day working on this 1,000 different URLs, now they'll just need to wait for things that they need to review as an output from the model. So it's an unattended bot. So that's why it continuously dispatches the URL, and then it notifies the lawyer or someone is the validator to check the quality of the output.
So it's based on notification, so they only spend time on it when it's required, when there are changes.
Absolutely.
And if you look to a regular law firm, let's say with 100 lawyers,
Yeah.
how much hours is this?
So let's say 8 hours a day, or let's say 6 hours a day, 100 lawyers, 600 hours, give or take.
It's immense. It's immense. Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a great case.
Get
And
value.
I think we don't have to even discuss the ROI. It's
Absolutely.
quite obvious.
Absolutely.
Russell, thanks a lot.
Thank you
Great
so much
insight.
thanks
I'm
for
going to
having me.
continue my tour, but I'm looking forward to speak to it once again. We show it
Absolutely.
over here,
Yeah.
and when we go to the next step, because I think there's more steps to take
Absolutely.
with large language models. And thanks a lot. Generative AI is going to change this whole world.
Absolutely. Thanks for
Thanks,
having me again.
and see you next time.
See you.
Thanks. Hi Alex, how are you?
How are you
The
today?
last station for my booth tour, but the most exciting one, I must say.
I hope so.
You're Alex Statie, you're the VP of Technical Education at UiPath, and it's a very important step because I had the booth tour. We talked about all the amazing things what you can do with AI, but what's AI without people? And we see a tremendous skill gap right now. Can you explain a little bit what you have discovered from skill gap, and also what kind of roles do we need?
Absolutely. And although our technology is automation and although our technology tends to free people time, it's still about the people, right?
Correct.
We're a very people-centric product. And education is more important than ever because AI is actually changing the way that we learn, and it's kind of serving the information just in time. It's a much more intuitive way to learn. And obviously, young people are learning differently than you and I. They are not kind of reading so many books. They tend to Google the information. They need to know how to search, and they need to be prepared for the jobs of the future, which, let me tell you, are going to be different than what you and I do today. I mean, being an influencer was not a job a few years ago, right?
It didn't even exist, and they're changing very quickly. That's also something very important. You need to upskill and you need to stay up to date.
Exactly, so that's why we observe a massive talent gap, and we observe that people that get training and get modern training have much better results in projects. And we have worked with companies like IDC to see data, and it looks like people that get 40 hours of training have 80% chance of fulfilling projects, like people that get from 20 to 25 hours, they have only 40% chance to do successful projects. So education is massively important.
But it's a limited amount.
course.
80 hours. What's 80 hours?
Well, that's why we try to make it just in time. That's why we try to make education easy, and that's why we give it for free.
Yeah.
Everything that you will see in UiPath Academy right now is for free. And we're basically tiering our audiences. We are obviously concentrating on professionals, but then we're also concentrating on enthusiasts. People that already have a day job and want to use automation and AI to get better results in their jobs. Right, so that's why you'll see we have all of those roles on the screen. We have 13 roles so far, and they are growing every day. Some of them are professional, some of them are very specialized. Like AI, you have to specialize it in order to fulfill a task.
Correct.
But some of them are just beginning. And we're trying to offer complete career paths from someone that's just getting started to the hero level, to people that can do basically everything.
But it's good to know you can be a beginner, you can be an expert, but share me some of the top wanted type of roles that are there right now. What are the roles that all companies want?
So it's funny that you asked that, because everyone wants to get certified recently, and it's a very important topic for us to certify people that they have the right skill set that employers are looking for in their projects. I think the most sought after role is the automation developer today. And what's interesting is the career progression, right? You can start from a business user that has zero experience with automation. You will have all the content in UiPath Academy to be an associate, to get certified at an associate level, then become an advanced automation developer, get certified at an advanced level, and then you can specialize. You can specialize in generative AI, for example. You can specialize in more specific AI, like document understanding. You can specialize in test automation. So basically, sky's the limit, and with a very solid foundation, you can then specialize in different things that might be interesting for you to do as an individual.
And if you look, you were mentioned already, but I want to clarify that. What do you need? You need a lot of enthusiasm, some good brains, and just a couple of hours to spend. Is that what you need, or is there something pre-selection required?
No, I think you need to feel the drive to do better at your job. That's the only thing that you need.
Okay.
And a bit of maybe logical thinking that can easily be acquired with a few hours of training. You know, our platform is a low-code platform, no-code to low-code platform, so we tend to target those individuals that do not have a developer background and teach them how to use the technology. And with AI, that's only going to become simpler and simpler, because the entry barrier is decreasing. You know, you can use AI to generate code.
Correct.
We already are launching technologies that can generate regular expressions and things that are very complicated that you wouldn't otherwise know if you're not a hardcore developer. The entry barrier has actually decreased with AI, which is great, because we can open our technology to more and more people.
And what kind of certification do you get? Is it per role?
We typically do per role, per level, because if you look at automation developer, which is the most popular role, you can be an associate, but then you can also be an expert.
Okay.
And the reality is, as you progress, you can do more and more. You can be more independent, you can automate more, you can have much better results. So that's why for each role we're certifying at slightly different levels, so that employers can understand what you're capable of doing.
So let us summarize it. If you're looking for a job in AI, search for a career path whether you have experience or no experience. There's definitely a role for you. You get certified, you can start simple and get more advanced, and it's for free.
Absolutely, and we're just launching a campaign which we call Elevate Your Skills. It's intended for non-technical people that already have a day job. That's completely free. That's going to teach you the basics of automation and AI and how to get started, and maybe offer your career in automation. You can just scan that QR code.
And I need to be sure that I'm not in front of it, but this is the QR code you can scan to start your career in AI, and it will totally change your life.
Thank
Alex,
you so much.
thanks a lot. Don't forget to register, and I'm going to my last station to summarize the whole tour. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
What an amazing tour, and such a fascinating use cases that we had on how AI is transforming the way that we work and when we're going to work. Now, I'm eager to hear from you which examples resonated most with you and which ones you are keen to implement in your organization. Maybe what was document processing, maybe it was the help desk support, or executing the self-service actions for your clients, or the test automation, or communication mining, which is applicable for everyone. Don't forget to equip yourself with the essential AI skills for 2023, and they are all available for free. Now, we'll share the link in the chat and in the post, of course, as well. Thank you for tuning in from UiPath Forward 6 here in Las Vegas. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Thanks and bye.